So, has been a listing on Marketplace for a little while for two vintage vacuums, and this is the second of which. Um, it's like he wasn't far from a relatives of mine, so it's like that when I stopped down there, I figured, if he still has these, I'm gonna look into them. But really, I was only interested in this Hoover Dial-A-Matic. He had both of them for $40, and so when I knew I was heading down to that relatives, I was like, okay. I'm like, are these available separately, or are they just a package deal? I wasn't really interested in this one. But he told me he'd do the Hoover for 30, and it's like, I was kind of hoping for 20, but it's like, whatever. So I stopped down there, I'm talking to the guy, and mentioned that I'm a collector, hence why I'm interested in buying this Hoover off of him. And he was talking about this other one, which I knew he had because it was on the listing. And I was like, yeah, just talking about it. And he, both of these things were his grandma's, and he's had them since she passed, which was back in when was it? I think he said 2005. Well, anyways, after testing out the Hoover, he had mentioned, the hose on this thing, and I'm like, and how his grandpa repaired it. Well, I took off the bad spot and I just put a little silicone in here and kind of got rid of that little piece, because it was completely split open, and I guess his grandpa had just taped it. And I was like, well, those old braided hoses don't really hold much suction anymore. I'm like, generally the rubber interior deteriorates and they just leak a lot. He's like, I haven't even checked that. So he went and plugged it in and put his hand to the end of this, and I was like, is there a bunch of air coming out of the exhaust here? And he's like, yeah, there's air coming through. I'm like, yeah, that hose is leaking. And the motor in here actually sounded pretty terrible, pretty dry. And then he's like, do you want to just take this one? And I was like, I wasn't gonna take it, because just like I told him, it's not really my cup of tea. It's, a little earlier than what I really go for in my collection. But then I thought about it, and it's like, I'm sure there's another collector out there that would appreciate this. It's like, even if I'm not interested in it. So I wasn't planning on doing any work to it. I was just gonna be like, hey, if someone wants this, they can have it for the cost of shipping. But then I thought to myself, how many opportunities am I going to have to see one of these? So I figured, let's do some work and get it up and running, and then I can take, measurements on it, just out of curiosity, of course. And then doing a little bit of actual research on it, I found that this is the Compact C1. This was the first model. And it was from, I think, 1946 to 1948. And interesting thing about compacts is they were actually meant to clean airplanes. I suppose, we don't think of them as particularly compact by today's standards, but when your standard canister was much longer than this, they had taken the bag assembly, and instead of placing it horizontally, had placed it vertically, so it was a little bit smaller or more compact. And this one is unlike any compact I've handled to this point, because usually they are divided in half, and you would detach some screws and then they come apart, kind of a clamshell sort of thing. But this one, this front piece is all solid, and then this detaches on the back. There are 3 screws, one here, 2 on the underside, and then you can pull this off to access your cord, your switch, and then like the rear of the motor. And then on the inside of here, and I don't think these were meant to originally use paper bags. I think they just used the cloth bag. I did try putting a bag in here in addition to there, and it becomes quite a bit harder to close. So I think just for the sake of the test, I'm going to do this without. But in order to mount the motor in here, they have this this assembly here, and it's not hard to get out of here, but trying to get these 3 screws back in blind, That's very annoying. But I did take the motor apart on here. So I got the fans cleaned, and I don't usually recondition bearings, but I figured in this case, you know, they're kind of an odd bearing, at least to me they are. They have kind of a protruding center on them, and I thought it might make it a little bit more difficult to find a replacement for it. So it's like I soaked them in acetone, and then I rinsed them, soaked them in acetone again, gave them another rinse, and then gave them a bath in some alcohol just to make sure that everything got dried out. And then I put some new grease into them. So the motor's sounding quite a bit better. Oh yes, and then I had to get some new carbon brushes for it too. I don't know exactly what was wrong with the carbon brushes that were in it, but when I tried to clean up the commutator on the back here, there was a pretty good amount of sparking. So I'm like, you know, I'm going to try some new brushes, and that seems to have done it. So it's not sparking like it used to, although I will say this machine was clearly very heavily used, because the commutator has kind of a concave to it where the carbon brushes have been rubbing on it over many years. So yeah, I have cleaned this up with a carbon brush seating stone, but as you can see, there is a noticeable groove. I just want to make sure I don't get like shocked. There is a noticeable groove where the carbon brushes have kind of worn away at the ow. It's warm. There's a noticeable groove where the carbon brushes have worn away at the commutator over the years, and there is kind of a darker spot here. I don't know if that's an indication of a bad anything bad or what, but you know, due to the uneven surface, it's pretty difficult for me to get the seating stone into there. I mean, it's running, and that's about all I know about it. You can do a lot to restore a vacuum, but you can't turn back time, that's for sure. So, I think I'm going to get on with this, although let's take a look at the model plate on here. There we are. Now, before I do start this up, it makes kind of an odd noise. It, to me, sounds like almost a high-pitched whistling, and it doesn't seem to do it when I block off the inlet. So I'm guessing it's air moving through in some weird fashion. It's like I thought it was a problem with the motor, but it's like I'm just not sure. See, that kind of like whining? But if I block this off, it doesn't do it. So I don't know what that's about. It sounds a heck of a lot better than it did, I'll say that much. Alright, take the ambient voltage. And our wattage. Alright, we'll take the, I did decide to leave the cloth bag out. I mean the disposable bag out. I took a quick suction reading with it in and out, and I mean, it's not making too significant a difference. My initial thought was perhaps that having that additional thing in here and having a better seal would give a slightly better performance, but you know, it's probably better to stick to the way it was intended to be used in the first place. So let's boot it up. Oh, I guess our maximum went up just a tish. Now, just for the fun of it, we're going to try this with the original hose. I don't know how leaky it is exactly, so I've actually pulled out one of the plastic hoses from a newer TriStar. So I think we'll use that as our kind of official measurements, if you will. Because, I mean, this is likely deteriorated to a point where it's probably not very reliable. Tends to be the case for a lot of older hoses. Well, better cared for than thought, I suppose. And here's something I just noticed. This has two locks on it, yet there's only one pin in the canister itself. It's kind of interesting. And now with the more modern hose attached. I clearly underestimated that braided hose. I figured it would be much worse. Whoops. Leaks quite a bit around the neck. Yeah, it was definitely interesting to be able to measure one of these. Like I said, I'm not an expert on these, so I still don't know why it's making that kind of whistling noise. And of course we see their patented wingtip vortex, which knocked all the debris towards the front of the bag, keeping the spot closest to the motor open. That was one of their claims to fame. They would label them as cyclonic because of it. Definitely one of the more unique cyclonic setups out there, I'll say that much. But yeah, I think I'm just going to go ahead with the plan to pass this on to another collector in some way, shape, or form. It's like, I don't have much into it, so it's like, I don't really care what it goes for. But it's like, I also can't exactly guarantee my repairs either, because I mean, it's a little bit beyond what I'm used to working on.